everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen, and in today's video I'm doing my June reading wrap-up. I read 4 books in June, a bunch of floppy paperbacks, starting with The Black Kids by Christina Hammonds Reed. And this was the final book from my 5-star prediction TBR tour, and while I did not give it 5 stars, I did give it 4 because it was very well written. It just had some excellent character work in it. This one is about a teenage black girl who's going to a fancy high school during the Rodney King riots in LA in 1993, and her kind of dealing with the fallout of all of this, but also kind of not, because she is a lot more protected from it than some of her peers. And this was just a really interesting time and place to explore, and like I said, the characters were so good that it felt really deeply and well explored with a lot of nuance. There were some wonderful lines in it because it was so focused on character and the time at which it takes place. It wasn't as plot heavy, but it was still a really engaging read, and I would highly recommend it. After that, I read The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green, which I have listened to the entire podcast, The Anthropocene Reviewed. The book does have a few extra things, but it is mostly the same. But reading it, I was definitely able to take it in more and take my time and think about it more deeply, I guess. So that was nice. I'm definitely glad to have the book version so I can just kind of look back on it easily whenever I feel like it. But one thing about the reading experience versus listening to the podcast, you know, 1 episode a month, I think was the rate at which they came out. So just reading it straight through makes you realize that the essays can get a little bit repetitive. A lot of the themes and a lot of the essays are quite similar, which does build and add to the overall theme of the book. But yeah, just reading it straight through gets a bit repetitive versus listening once a month. You're kind of able to forget some of what came in the episode before. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed it. Some of my personal favorite reviews are the reviews on CNN and Harvey and Googling Strangers. After that, I read Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welch. And this is part of a companion series. The first one is Love and Gelato, and it's a YA romance that takes place in Italy. This is the second one. It is a romance that takes place in Ireland, and the third one is Love and Olives, and that one takes place in Greece. Now, the reason I started with the second book in the series is because it was on sale at a bookstore, so I picked it up. And I knew that it was a companion series, so you don't actually have to read them in order. And honestly, I could tell where the 3 interconnected, even though I started on the second one anyways. And while I enjoyed this one well enough, I have decided not to continue with the series. I went and watched the movie version of Love and Gelato on Netflix after finishing this one, and I'm good enough with having read the second one and watched the first one and calling it good. They were both fine, but I just don't see myself taking the effort to go seek out the first book or the third book or pay for them. I did really enjoy the guidebook excerpts, but the writing style of the rest of the story was just kind of meh for me. The mystery of like what happened between the main character and her previous boyfriend during most of the story I found kind of frustrating. I do feel like I learned a little bit about Ireland, which was fun. I liked some of the side characters quite a bit more than any of the main characters. But yeah, overall, it was just a very okay book for me personally. But I'm not a huge romance girly, so that wasn't like a huge surprise. I think if you are a big romance girly, you probably would like this. Or romance dude, whichever. And then finally in June, I read Good Behavior by Blake Crouch. And this one is actually 3 novellas, and there is a TV spin-off of these novellas, which is actually why I purchased this book. I loved this television series. It sadly only lasted 2 seasons. It was on TNT, but it's got Michelle Dockery from Downton Abbey, and it was just so good. It is about a character who struggles with drug addiction, and she finds that the only time she doesn't feel the desire to take drugs is when she's stealing. So she's the main focus of the novellas and the TV series. But in the TV series, something that I really enjoy that was not in the novellas is she ends up meeting a man who kills people for money. And they oddly find that they both are better people when they are together. So obviously they're both struggling with these terrible vices. In one case, not so much a vice, but you see what I mean. But they both just do better when they're together, even though you would think that they would be bad influences on each other. And it's a really interesting dynamic that unfortunately is not really featured in the novellas. I definitely did not enjoy the novellas as much as the TV show, but I am always interested to see the differences between the same story told in different formats. The first novella in the book is very similar to the first episode of the TV show, with the major differences coming in how the story ends, which again, I liked how the TV show did it much better than the novella, but it was a pretty good twist. It keeps the element of Letty, the main character, discovering that a man has hired a man to kill his wife and her deciding to try to stop this from happening. But of course she can't go to the police, otherwise she will get in trouble herself because she was stealing from hotel rooms when she discovered this information. So it's got great action, great suspense. It's a lot of fun. The second novella in the book was my least favorite of the three. It is one that is not really featured in the show at all. In this one, Letty gets hired to steal a painting from an uber-rich billionaire who is about to be going to jail for the rest of his life. So she goes to his private island and is pretending that she's going to be his escort for his final night of freedom, but really she's supposed to knock him out and steal this painting. But then, and if you don't want spoilers for the story, it gets flipped and it turns out that he really just wanted to hunt a human being on his final night of life, of freedom, and kill a human being. So it's a concept that's been done before. It's kind of a tired concept because it's been done before and it's been done better in my opinion. This one also just had some kind of ridiculous elements. At one point, the very fancy, it's not a Chanel dress, it's a really big brand dress, gets just completely ripped from her body because she's running through bushes and trees to get away from this dude. It's ridiculous. Just ridiculous and annoying. So yeah, the second story was by far my least favorite. And the third story was my favorite story. It featured a character from the show, but with a really good twist to his character. Again, I still prefer the show version of this character, but I wasn't mad at the change to the character because it was such a good twist. And this one is featured on the show, but changed quite a bit more than the first story was. And honestly, I don't remember the episode that took its storyline from the third novella. I'm doing a rewatch, so I am soon to see it again, but at the time of reading it, I really didn't remember it from the show. But anyways, the kind of moral of this review is go watch the TV show Good Behavior because it's excellent. It's only 2 seasons, so it's a quick watch, although you might be sad by the end that it is only 2 seasons. And you know, if you really do love it, reading the book was interesting, but definitely if you're picking between one or the other, the show is the way to go. So that was it for all of the books that I read in June. I feel like I've really been zooming on reading recently. Let me know down below what you read in June. I hope you enjoyed watching. Remember, words matter.